In Emmanuel Acho's previous video about pro-life versus pro-choice, he highlighted two women who decided to terminate their pregnancies. The point was to highlight how nuanced and complicated these situations are, encouraging all of us to extend empathy and compassion to women who have gone through this traumatic experience. One of the ladies was an Olympic star who was headed to the Beijing Olympics and had an abortion right before she was headed out to compete. The notion was that it was no way she could be successful in her passion and career while simultaneously having a child. I found it very odd that they couldn't find any women who decided to keep their pregnancies and highlight their positive experiences. And then I stumbled across the story of a friend of mine's little sister, Jolie Robinson, a track and field athlete who's a champion in 3 different events, a 3-time All-American, and holds 2 different school records. But what you wouldn't know is that she went through the struggle of a teen pregnancy, choosing to keep the baby while continuing her athletic career as a track star and balancing it with being a mother.
Ruslan.
You were in high school and something in this situation started, and just walk me through kind of the timeline of events, if you will.
Okay, so I found out I was pregnant in March of 2019, and that was like towards the middle end of my track season. And that year I was like projected to go pretty well, like far in state and do well and compete at like a pretty high level because I was getting recruited and all this stuff. But obviously I was not in my best shape because I was growing another human in me. So I was exhausted, and since I was 18 at the time, I could call myself out of school. So I almost never went to school and just went to practice. Like only when I had a test, I would really go. And my parents didn't know at first. No one around me knew, like no friends, no teachers or anything. There's a few friends that knew that I like could trust and that I told, but it was like a lot to process at 18, and I didn't know how other people would like accept it, or how I would live my life and like hold myself when people knew like I was pregnant and I had all these opportunities going for me, like, and how I would tell the schools I was talking to, like how like, oh, sorry, I can't go, I'm pregnant. So that was just like something difficult for me to deal with, just like internally. But everything kind of, we'll see, like worked out for good.
And so I'm assuming you're young, you're scared, right? You're an athlete. So I'm assuming the fear of this had to be a real reality for you. And how did you just deal with that side of things in terms of like, holy moly, like here I am, I have all of these options, all of these things that I think are going to go in my direction. And now there's this reality of like, this may not go the way, your life is not going the way you projected it to go. And how did you deal with that fear?
Yeah. Honestly, like I thought to myself, there's nothing really I can do about it. Like I'm just gonna have to accept it. And it was weird, like when I found out I was pregnant, there was some kind of like peace over me where I just felt like everything's working out the way it's supposed to, like God has a plan for me. So I wasn't totally crazy chaotic. I was just like, everything's gonna be okay, because I know I have a loving, supportive family. My friends were supportive, so like I knew I didn't have to worry about anything, but I just knew it is what it is, and I'm going to make the best of it.
And so how old were you when the baby was finally born?
He was born on my 19th birthday.
Wow. And so your
Yeah.
senior year, you are going through your senior year. Are you competing while you're pregnant as well?
Yeah, I was competing while I was pregnant. So when I graduated high school, I was 3 months pregnant. So 2 of my 3 high school records were when I was pregnant. And then I went to like CIF and everything, like postseason stuff while I was pregnant, and no one really knew. I told my parents the day after, like the meet, to go to state, where I was going to make it to state, should have made it to state. I was so tired. I think I had to pull over because I like had some morning sickness before, but they didn't know yet. But after that meet is when I sat them down and told them. But I think I competed even better when I was pregnant at some points. Like why I broke 2 of my school records then is because I just knew this might be my last time I could ever do this. So it kind of gave me the extra motivation to like make the most of this time that I have.
So you competed better when you were pregnant.
Yeah.
You're saying that wasn't a physical thing, that was just purely motivation and like
Yeah.
drive, because you're like, this might be the end of this potential, you were assuming this was going to be this long career, and you're like, this might be it. This is going to be
Yeah.
cut short.
hmm And I knew
And
it wasn't physical. I knew it wasn't a physical, like I was sleeping like 12 hours a day, so I knew my body's not at like the top performing, but I just knew that my mind kind of helped me push through and do better.
And how far along are you at this meet where you said you set two of your three records, right?
I was probably like 2 months pregnant about.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so after that, you finally sit your parents down. It's their senior year of high school. And what was their reaction? Your dad's a pastor. This
Yeah.
isn't something you planned for yourself. What was their reaction?
It was mainly like kind of not disbelief, because like that's not something I would lie about, but it was like they just kind of like they're hugging me and saying like it's going to be okay. Like me and my mom were crying. My dad's just like, there's a plan for everything. Like you're going to be okay. We're going to love this baby. And um like, and just with even like a week after, my mom's already buying me little baby clothes and everything, like because they can't just be upset about it. Like it's going to be part of my life, and of course they're going to embrace it and love me and love my child, like no matter what, like the circumstances, doesn't matter when a baby comes, like it's still a life and they're going to love it.
Was there ever a point where you told somebody or they presented the idea of terminating the pregnancy, or is that something that ever ran through your mind?
um it never ran through my mind as an option. Like of course I knew other people in this situation might consider that. I just knew that's just not what I really wanted for my life. And even before I found out I was pregnant or anything, I had such a clear vision in my mind. I don't know if it was a dream or something, but I even told my dad, I was like, I just have a feeling that at my wedding I'm gonna have a son. And he was like, where did that come from? Like, why are you thinking that? And I'm like, it's just such a clear picture in my mind that I'm gonna have a son. And so when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, I already know it's gonna be a boy. And then I ended up having a boy. Like when they told me, I was like, yeah, I know. Because everything, it was just so like pieces were just fitting every time. Even people think that that's such a horrible thing that would happen, like wow, you got pregnant, all of this. I was like, everything is just working though. Like I had these visions in my head of what was going to happen, and I just saw like God working in my life.
Wow. So how does this conversation hit for you as a teen mother who seemingly defied all the odds? And is it fair to say that some of this obviously helped you at that meet, but it seems like it's helped you since? You're still
Yeah.
competing, you're still doing great, you're going to be going to a D1 school, and continuing on in this career. So it seems like this gave you the biggest motivator and the biggest drive. I think you even said that on your Instagram.
Yeah.
How are you processing this national dialogue around this, like, like this is inhibiting on women's dreams, and this is so, like, and you're like, kind of just defied all the odds despite,
Yeah.
despite all the narratives. Like, how do you process this?
Well, it's just like my son has given me the most motivation. Like even when I won the things at state, like I brought him up on the podium with me, because without him, like I couldn't do any of this, because it helped me stay diligent on what I needed to do. And like when I'm in practice for those 2 or 3 hours, I'm like totally focused on, this is where I am right now. This is what I need to be focusing on, because I know right after this, I'm going home. I'm going to make dinner for my son. I'm going to do my homework. Like I have to be very structured about what I do, and I can appreciate the opportunity that I have more now. And like my mental maturity has really grown through all of this. And I know people have everything to say about my situation and think like, wow, that must be so hard. Like, don't you just kind of like, if he wasn't there, you'd have so much more time and so much, but like, he helped me so much and encouraged me to do better, not just for myself, but for him, and to prove to people that you can still do this. And it's like, it's totally possible to have a kid, be young, and still compete and still do well.
I'm going to say something that may be controversial, and I think this is the case in my life. I was much older. We had our first son, Levi, when I was 30. I was 29, actually. And what I found in my life is that when I didn't have the tangible motivation of a child or of a family, I had a lot of disposable time that I didn't necessarily use on my craft, right? But all of a sudden, when the motivation became tangible and it became about something bigger than just me, um, all of a sudden I was able to manage my time and be substantially more focused on getting the
Mhm.
tasks done that mattered and ultimately benefited my whole unit. Would you say it was kind of similar for you, that like despite not having a ton of time, this child, this blessing is now an amazing motivator for you to figure it out? Is that a fair assessment
Yeah.
in your situation, even though you're much younger than
Yeah,
I am?
definitely. Because even in high school, if I had a homework assignment, like a 3-page essay, would take me at least a week to get that done. And now, like, I can get that done in a day because I know this is my time slot where I can do certain things, and I'm going to make the most of it and be more just like focus on what I need to do because there's so many other things that I like have going on, but it keeps me on the right track. It keeps me like I'm getting so much more done now with more on my plate. Like than I was like in high school. I don't even know what I was doing. Like now I'm thinking I had so much, I didn't have a job. I was just playing sports, going to school, but I didn't really do anything like productive, but I felt like I was so busy all the time.
What is your advice? Say there's a young woman watching this, say she's in high school, say she's maybe seeing some of this dialogue, she's afraid. What advice would you have for her with regards to now being on the other side of the situation? And granted, you have sounds like an amazing family, supporting family,
Mm-hmm.
right? But what would your advice be to someone that is like where you were at a couple years ago, afraid, not really knowing how to process, not knowing
Mm-hmm.
what the right decision is, quote unquote? What would you think about? What advice would you give for someone like that?
Yeah. So I actually get a lot of DMs, a lot of messages from young girls who say like, I just found out I'm pregnant. I'm in high school. I do these sports, whatever. Like that's why I love TikTok. It can go to so many different audiences, and people can message me. Like young moms can say like, this is I've seen what you're capable of, and you've like motivated me. So that I always like encourage them. Like it is so worth it. Like it might not be always be easy. Like I'm not gonna lie to them and say like, oh, it's easy, but it's so worth it, and it's so rewarding to see the life that you made and still accomplish things, and it's possible. And I tell them that there's always opportunity there. Like right now my team is probably the best babysitters and best people to have around. Like I even had to bring my son to the weight room today with my team while we were lifting.
Yeah, I saw
And
that on your
I'm
Instagram. It was really
yeah,
cute.
yeah, so he's always like around and everyone loves him. The coaches love him and they know he's part of the package when I come. And that's just something some people might not accept, but every coach I've had, especially when talking to schools that I'm transferring to, I'm like, number one priority is my child. So when they're asking, oh, do you have any questions about the school? I'm like, how's your child care? How's all this? And like they're so welcoming and open to me having a kid because they know I'm capable of doing that. And like you don't understand what you're capable of until you actually put yourself in it. I never thought I'd be able to do anything like this, but now I'm doing it, and I'm like, I can encourage everyone else that like it's so possible to do, and that's what I try to do with a lot of young moms that even message me now already.
That's so cool. Do you think that stories like this, which aren't uncommon by the way, like it didn't take me a
Mm-hmm.
long time to stumble across just through a friend. I'm friends with your brother, right? So it was kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh wow, like same day. And then I started
Yeah.
getting other women DMing me that have almost the same exact story. Like I got pregnant at
Yeah.
16, kept the baby, and my life is great now. It's the best thing that ever happened to me, right?
Yeah.
Do you think there's some kind of like agenda to suppress this narrative as a part of this conversation, that you don't really hear this story platformed a whole lot? And what do you think is
Mm-hmm.
behind that?
Yeah, definitely. Even competing this year, there was another girl who had a kid too. We had like kids around the same time, and like it's kind of like whoa, like there's someone else who's just like me, so you can kind of bond over that. And like going through my situation, there are a lot of people that say like, oh, I went through the same thing, and you don't really hear about it that much. But like when you find someone that has gone through the same thing, you can really connect. Um, but it just I think people might not always want to hear the success stories of that. Like it might just be like, oh well, if they didn't do that, like they still it took them much longer to do that, or kind of look at the positive and negatives. It kind of depends what side you're looking at, if someone is in support of that or not. Like because even in high school there are people saying like, I can't believe you would put this at risk, like you had so much going for you. But that's just like that's part
So
of
there was
it, part
other
of life.
people acting like your life was over and it was
Yeah.
your life, and you're
Yeah.
choosing to have this baby, which is incredible, and they're projecting on you this
Yeah.
hyper toxic view that like, oh my gosh, your life is over. That was actually
Yeah.
that you were experiencing that.
Yeah, because I would hear from other people too, like my friends that were like lower classmen or whatever, who who I still talk to. They were like everyone kind of knew, especially because I was one like athlete of the year at my school, like most athletic, like all of this stuff, and they're like, she really just gave all of that away for that, and it's like I didn't give anything away. I just like there's more opportunity in my life now. Like I didn't my opportunity to play sports wasn't gone. Like nothing was gone. It just I had a baby. I can still do everything else.
Yeah. Wow. Was there any shame from the Christian community or from like church going folks? Because
Hmm.
it sounds like there was some shame from folks that are pro-choice. Like, how can she keep this baby? Oh my gosh, which is really gross
Yeah.
to think about, like out loud, like
Hmm.
especially being on the other side of this. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't even wrap my mind around it. But was there any? Did you feel shame, or did you feel people like all of a sudden became more judgy towards you despite going through this, or was there more or less support for you?
Yeah, I feel like in like when I went to church, like the first time going to church with like a big stomach, I'm thinking, what are people going to think? Because I obviously look young and I don't have a wedding ring on or anything. But I feel like I got the most support when I was at church and around other Christians and other believers, and they were like more happy to see like where my life could go, like what God's doing in my life, instead of like judging me for that, because I think all the believers I've been around have been so loving to me and supportive, and like they know that everything like works together for the good. So I the only time I really felt judged or anything was out in public by non-believers or just people who didn't even know me or at all or anything, but people close to me were really supportive and loving, and if I needed anything, we're there to help.
If your dad wasn't a pastor, do you feel like your church community would have wrapped their arms around you and helped you with this baby, even if your dad was in ministry, your family wasn't Christian, and you were
Hmm.
just a young girl in church? Do you feel like the church would have rallied around you and supported you?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had an issue, even now, like having a son and he's like 2.5, being at church. I've never had anyone kind of talk down on me. So yeah, I don't think so. I think they've always been loving towards me.
It seems like most people generally enjoy children and even
Hmm.
other people's children, right? Like
Yeah.
they're willing to babysit, they're willing to hang out, they're willing
Hmm.
to hold the baby, they're willing to give you a break. And this is for me and my wife. So I would imagine if you're a single mother
Hmm.
in a local church, that it would be much similar in that
Yeah.
dynamic, even if your family wasn't, super involved. I think that's a
Hmm.
fair assessment. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because even the girls on my team who say like, I didn't want kids before, and then they meet my son and they're like, I like him. Like maybe one kid won't hurt. So like they kind of can see how good kids are even if they didn't like kids before.
Do you have any thoughts when people push back and say, that's great for her, but she was a
Mhm.
teenager and she was in a relationship and she chose to go through with this. What about, and then they fill it in with some horrific, terrible
Yeah.
example where there's abuse, where there's incest, where there's, just awful situations, and they take those as the example to say this therefore needs to be permissible for any woman at
Mhm.
any time as an elective procedure. What are your thoughts on that, being on the other side of all this?
Yeah. Well, I think everyone's situation is different, but a life is a life, and the baby didn't do anything wrong. So it's like a child always has a different opportunity for life, like where their life can go. And as long as they're loved and supported, have people around them, like they're capable of so much. The mom is always capable of so much as long as there's people around them who can love them. It's always harder to make those hard choices where like I want to have my child if people aren't there supporting you. But that was like the best part for me when I did have the support. If my parents were like, well, I guess you're going to have to deal with that. You're going to, like, it would be a lot harder to kind of persevere through all of these challenges. But when people can just say, like, you got it, like, you can do this, that really just motivates you. And, like, you can do things that you never thought you would be able to.
What's the most wild like DM you've gotten? You're active on social media, you're active on TikTok.
Hmm.
stories that you've been able to help young women behind the scenes kind of make some of these decisions, and just kind of hear something that is similar to yours and interacting with that?
Yeah, well, there's been a few messages where people say like, I don't know if I could do this. Like, I just found out I was pregnant, and like I'm considering not having the baby, and like I was kind of one of their last resort. Like I'm a complete stranger to them, but they're like, you went through this, so what's your advice? Because I don't think I can do this, and I write paragraphs back to them like, you can do this. Like, don't you're the only one doubting yourself. Like, come on, you're capable of so much more. And I tell them my experiences, all of it, like everything I've been through and everything. Like if they ask, well, I don't know where I can go to get help, and I'm like I give so many of my son's old baby stuff away, and I like, hey, if you need this, like I prioritize the young single moms that message me, like if you need clothes, if you need any of this, because since I'm so blessed to have everything I need for my son, I just like use those blessings to also help everyone else who might not be in the same situation that I am. But I always encourage moms that like, you can do this. Don't ever doubt that you're not capable of being young. Just because you're young doesn't mean you can't raise a child to be a great man or woman. Like, you're so capable of it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a very empowering message to young women, and instead they're kind of told the opposite. Have you ever seen this conversation transition into an actual baby being born? They weren't sure if they can do it. You encourage them, you provide resource to them, and then you actually like have seen the baby be born 6 months or a
Yeah.
month later, and you're like, whoa, this is a trip, because that almost didn't happen. Has that happened?
Yeah, so every once in a while, like when I go back through my DMs, I remember, oh, this girl was messaging me about it, and I'll kind of look at their account and see like them posting pictures with their baby and stuff, and it just kind of like, I don't need to say anything because I did what I needed to, and then I could see like their joy as they like live out what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah, that's a trip. Like that's really a trip if you think about it. That like you were influential. We don't know how influential. Ultimately, God was, driving your platform and how you're using it. But that probably helped save a couple babies out here.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a trip. How do you feel about that?
I'm just like, God put me in the right position to do things. I think a big part of it is that I was never ashamed to post my life online. Like when I found out I was pregnant, like all this, I was posting pictures, and like I wasn't trying to keep it hidden about being pregnant, about this whole, because it's like, this is my life, and I'm not going to be ashamed of like, yeah, I made some certain choices, but I'm making it into something good. So when other girls see that, like I want to encourage them to like, don't hide behind, because society will tell you this is wrong and you should be ashamed of this choice that you made in your life. But I'm trying to show them that like, put it out there, because like, and obviously now people love to see that. People love to see your success story of um, like, yeah, I had a kid, started bad, but look at how great it's turned out, and I'm not ashamed to show it online.
Do you think, as an athlete, oftentimes we know that the pathway to flourishing is through discomfort, and oftentimes going through difficult things helps you get that breakthrough. Do you think some of your mindset as an athlete, of someone that was, yes, you were naturally gifted, but you also had to put in the work, that there was this thing of like, I'm okay with going through a very uncomfortable, inconvenient situation because I
Yeah.
understand that the greater good is going to be in my favor. And do you think there was some of that kind of went into your mentality? Because athletes tend to just have a different view of discomfort, of suffering, of
Yeah.
struggle, because we know that on the other side of that, there's usually breakthrough and victory.
So I took my labor as, since I've always been working hard as an athlete, like you're not doing it right if it doesn't hurt, like that last rep or that last anything. So like when I was gonna have a baby, I was like, yeah, it's gonna be painful, but this is like a workout. I'm gonna like persevere through it, and I'm gonna feel great after. It just felt like a really hard workout. But then taking 2 years off, and that, like from doing any sports, any athletics, I just kind of was like, I'm going to be a mom for a little. I honestly didn't think I'd be able to compete again. But then I think taking those 2 years off, even though I didn't do anything athletic, it just like grew my mental maturity, so that once I, like, my parents were like, if you want to play sports again, like we'll support you, we'll watch him if you need us to, anything. It just helped me like appreciate that I could play sports again. So it helped, like I did so much better because I just kind of grew up and I got to appreciate everything that I went through. And now I can have my son watch me be successful in these sports.
That's so cool. Is there a macro vision or burden or like calling that you feel kind of connected to this post sports just kind of going on in your life in terms of all these incredible interactions you've had? Do you see yourself, doing more within this type of line of work?
Oh yeah, definitely. I always want to be like kind of a voice of encouragement for especially young moms, just to say like it's possible because this is how my life turned out. And I've made so many great friends through this. Like I just have met so many people, and I want to be there as an opportunity where more people can just message me and look for some positive encouragement through all of this. So that's just like I definitely want to like keep going in this way and being that positive voice for people.
That's so awesome. Do you have any final thoughts, final words, young ladies watching this that they're feeling afraid, they're scared? What final words would you have? And then also let them know where they can reach you. I'll link your Instagram and your TikTok below. But yeah, any final thoughts, words before we get out of here?
Well, a lot of girls ask me like the dad doesn't want to be involved. Like I don't know if I could do this alone. And so after dating my son's dad for 3 years, we weren't together. We haven't been together since my son was born. But we're just co-parenting. And even if you're not with the person that you had a child with, it's still, you can still do it like separately, but together, even if the dad doesn't want to be involved at all, you can still do it. Like, I know that his father is a lot of help, but also if he happened to not be there, I would be able to help my child too. So like you're capable of it, even if the father is there, is not. Of course it helps if he is, but if he's not, like I always encourage women that you can do this on your own. Like there's been so many single moms in the world, and like like there's a lot of success stories about single moms as well. So that's like one of the main things that I encourage women to do. Like even if the father does not want to be involved, this is like your choice to make, and you can be a great mother like on your own.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And all your handles are just Joe_Rob
Yeah.
RAWB on all platforms.
Yep. Hmm.
Awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and hanging out. And thank you so much for coming on, Joe, sharing your story. I'll link your handles in the description and the pinned comment. You guys feel free to, if you're in a situation, where you're going through something similar, it sounds like she's more than open to having these dialogues. So thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my initial thoughts on this entire conversation, as well as some extended thoughts on potentially Joe Rogan changing his mind on this. I think we need to platform more women like Joe so they can share their story, because I just don't see it shared in society. I only see the story of how ending a pregnancy is the best decision a woman could have ever made for herself. And it's awesome to hear women say, you know what, keeping the baby was the best decision that I've ever made. Leave a comment, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys over there. All right, peace.